I woke up on Palm Sunday to news of the Sumi attack, getting ready for worship at my church, knowing that my brothers and sisters, friends, relatives are being targeted and affected in this way is just heartbreaking. And then the irony of today is it's Holy Wednesday, or in some Christian traditions, it's called Spy Wednesday, where Judas makes a plot to abandon Jesus. And many Ukrainians right now in Ukraine and those who are living abroad do feel like in some ways they're being abandoned by the government of the United States, which does provide an opportunity then for people like myself and others like your viewers to step into these spaces to help.
The United States has refused to support a G7 statement that would have condemned a Russian strike on the Ukrainian city of Sumy this weekend. The attack killed at least 36 people, but the USA has argued that could complicate their ongoing negotiations with Russia. Donald Trump's described the strikes as so sad, but he also appeared to blame the outbreak of war on President Zelensky and Ukraine in a social media post. Let's talk now to Andrew Moroz, a Ukrainian-born pastor who lives in America, but who's travelled to Ukraine several times since 2022, delivering aid. Andrew, welcome to the programme.
John, thanks so much for having me. London is one of my favorite cities in the world, and it's a privilege to chat with you.
Well, it's good to have you with us, Andrew. Thank you for making time for that. I just wonder, Andrew, trying to put myself in your shoes now, what it must be like to be a Ukrainian in America right now, seeing this argument, the kind that I'm talking about now, going on all around you. Do you feel as if you've been abandoned by the US administration? What are your thoughts? Tell me.
Yeah, thanks for asking. So my heart is torn. We're in the middle of Holy Week in the Christian tradition, and I woke up on Palm Sunday to news of the Sumi attack, getting ready for worship at my church, knowing that my brothers and sisters, friends, relatives are being targeted and affected in this way is just heartbreaking. And then the irony of today is it's Holy Wednesday, or in some Christian traditions, it's called Spy Wednesday, where Judas makes a plot to abandon Jesus. And many Ukrainians right now in Ukraine and those who are living abroad do feel like in some ways they're being abandoned by the government of the United States, which does provide an opportunity then for people like myself and others like your viewers to step into these spaces to help.
I only have to listen to you speak, Andrew, to see that, look, you are, to what intents and purposes, you sound exactly like an American. It would feel exactly like your home. And there are many Ukrainians, I know, in the United States. But also, how do you read the mood of the American public? I know that's a wild generalization. Different people feel different things. But the mood of the American public now about Ukraine. We've talked about the government. What about the people?
Yeah, so with our church and also our nonprofit, the Renewal Initiative, we've been able to serve refugees who've come over to Virginia and throughout the United States. And right now, many of my Ukrainian friends who are here right now are nervous because it's a precarious situation where before there was overwhelming support. When the war first began, there was lots of resources that were available. People were opening their homes and their arms, and now that support is limited to a degree. And I'll give you an example of this. I gave a presentation at a retirement community at the beginning of the invasion. Over 100 individuals showed up to hear this. They were deeply invested emotionally and even relationally. I went back to that same retirement community just a little while ago. 10 to 12 people showed up to that same room, same presentation. So the mood has definitely shifted, and that makes my Ukrainian friends feel very nervous, very uncertain about what might be happening in this time.
How do you explain that shift in mood then? And are we talking about war weariness? Because, it's a fact of life that people get, I know they get bored. They move on in the things that grab their imagination and their emotions. Is that what's going on? Or are people just thinking differently about the war and their loyalties and allegiances shifting a bit?
So a couple things. You said it. Definitely war weariness. We get tired, and we want new news. What else is happening that we need to plug ourselves into? But another part of the shift is certainly the political situation in the United States. And I saw this coming about a year or two back when we first started watching the Republican group speak out against the Democrats and their treatment of Ukraine. And I thought to myself, Ukraine's going to get caught in the crossfire. Civilians and individuals who don't want this war any more than anybody else, they're gonna become political pawns, was the language I was using. And so part of my job and responsibility is to speak the truth in any political or cultural context, to bring people back to what's important ethically and relationally and spiritually and emotionally. What makes us human? And right now, there is a little bit of an atmosphere of fear, John. Even having the conversation, you're not sure if you're allowed to talk about this publicly, because speaking about defending Ukraine or supporting Ukraine sounds to some people like you're anti-US government. And I'm trying to help people understand that it's not an either or. You can be a dedicated American, loving your country, wanting it to flourish, and you can walk alongside of people who are hurting in places like Ukraine or elsewhere. And so just I'm trying to help normalize the conversation again, where before I didn't have to work so hard to do that.
Right. So the administration's less supportive approach to Ukraine, to put it that way, that is feeding through to people on the ground around America. Now that brings us to the point of spreading the word, and you are planning, aren't you, to bring Ukrainian nurses over to America for training and for respite as part of that effort. Do tell us more.
Yeah, so we do a couple of things with the renewalinitiative.com. We send teams to Ukraine. We do projects like the Nurse Respite Program, where we bring them over here. And then we hope that some of these projects turn into long-term programs, like a Lego club to serve kids in Ukraine, for example. Last November, I brought a group of medical professionals from the United States to the front lines of the war. We were serving in a medical bunker where the first wounded soldiers are coming. And we learned about these nurses that have been there for over 3 years, where every day what they experience is war and trauma and pain. And we wanted to help bring them out of this place, bring them out of that environment for some rest to be poured into, to renew their hope, to remind them of their dignity, to remind them of their humanity. And so our goal, we're working with Emory University right now to establish a program in Atlanta and then also in Virginia here locally, where we can bring, right now the plan is 4 nurses depending on funding. And we hope this turns into a program where others can come, because as long as there's life, there is hope. And we want to remind these people that there is life outside of war and beyond war.
Okay, Andrew, all the very best with your program. Thank you for joining us. Andrew,
yeah, thanks a lot.
Andrew Moroz there.